Aaron had spent most of his adult life in the city surrounded by noise, traffic, and endless work. Every day felt the same, from the sound of car horns in the morning to the bright lights that never let him rest at night. He often dreamed about leaving the city behind and living in a quiet place near nature, where the air was clean and the evenings were calm. That dream finally started to come true when he found an old cabin for sale near a lake called Pine Hill. The pictures online showed a small but beautiful wooden cabin sitting near the edge of a calm lake surrounded by tall green trees. The listing said the property was old but still strong and perfect for renovation. Aaron immediately imagined himself repairing the walls, painting the porch, and turning it into a cozy weekend home. The price was reasonable, and the seller, a man named Mr. Lewis, told him the place had been empty for years because the previous owner moved abroad. Everything about the deal looked clear and simple, so Aaron decided to buy it without much hesitation. After all the papers were signed, he packed his tools, some food supplies, and a few clothes into his small pickup truck and drove toward Pine Hill Lake. The drive took nearly 5 hours from the city, but the view made it worth it. The roads became narrower and greener as he got closer to the lake. When he finally reached the sign that said "Welcome to Pine Hill Community," he felt a strange mix of excitement and peace. The air smelled of pine and fresh water, and the breeze carried the faint scent of rain. Aaron followed a winding dirt road that led him deeper into the woods until he saw the cabin. It stood quietly near the lake with sunlight reflecting off the water and birds gliding over the surface. The paint on the cabin was faded, the steps were uneven, and a few roof shingles were missing, but it looked perfect to him. He parked near a small stone path and stood for a moment to take in the sight. It felt like the world had stopped rushing. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. The wooden floor creaked under his boots, and dust danced in the sunlight that came through the window. The living room was small, with an old fireplace in the corner and a few cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. There was a kitchen to the right and a staircase leading to a small bedroom upstairs. It was simple but full of character. Aaron started cleaning right away. He opened all the windows to let in fresh air and wiped the dust from the shelves. He made a list of what needed fixing: the roof, the porch railing, and a few broken window frames. As he worked, he played music from his phone and enjoyed the rhythm of sweeping, scrubbing, and hammering. It was peaceful, and for the first time in months he felt relaxed. By afternoon, he took a break and sat outside on the porch with a bottle of water. The lake glimmered under the soft sun, and a few fish jumped near the surface. The only sound was the wind through the trees and the gentle rustling of leaves. He thought to himself that this was exactly what he had wanted: a simple life surrounded by nature. But then something unexpected happened. From a distance, he heard the low sound of an engine coming closer. At first, he assumed it might be a local farmer or someone from town passing by. The road to the cabin was narrow and rarely used, so visitors were unusual. Within a few minutes, a white SUV appeared from behind the trees and rolled to a stop near his car. The vehicle had a logo printed on the side that read, "Lakeside HOA Security." 2 men stepped out of the SUV. They both wore navy shirts with badges. One of them was tall and had a serious face, while the other held a small notebook and looked more curious than strict. Aaron stood up and waved politely. The taller man spoke first. "Sir, this property is not open to the public. May I ask what you're doing here?" Aaron looked puzzled. "I'm not trespassing. I bought this cabin last week. I'm here to renovate it. I have all the legal papers with me." The man frowned and looked at his partner. "This area falls under the HOA's restricted zone. Are you sure you have permission to be here?" Aaron nodded and went to his truck to take out a folder. "Here, I have the sale deed and the transfer documents. The seller told me it was private land, not part of any association." The second guard flipped open his notebook and started writing. "Can I get your full name, sir?" "Aaron Malik," he replied while handing the papers over. The guards looked at the documents but did not say much. They walked around the cabin, inspecting the property as if checking something invisible. After a moment, the taller guard said, "We'll have to verify this with the Lakeside HOA office. We haven't had any new ownership registered for this zone in a long time. Until we confirm, we'll ask you not to make any major changes to the property." Aaron felt uneasy. "But I already started cleaning and fixing a few things. This place is mine now. I don't understand what the problem is." The guard's tone softened slightly. "Sir, I'm not saying you're wrong. It could be a simple error in our system, but you'll need to stay off major renovations until this is cleared. "We'll get back to you soon." They handed him back the papers and got into their SUV. As they drove away, a cloud of dust followed their tires and silence returned to the cabin. Aaron stood for a long time staring at the road. The peaceful atmosphere of the lake now felt strange. Why would guards claim the property was restricted when he had all the legal documents? The thought bothered him, but he tried to calm down. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. He decided to stay the night since it was already getting late. He made some instant noodles on a small gas stove, then sat near the window watching the lake under the moonlight. The reflection of the trees shimmered on the water, and small ripples spread whenever the wind blew. The beauty of the scene made him forget his worries for a while. But as the night deepened, he began to hear distant sounds outside the cabin. They were soft at first, like the crunch of gravel under slow footsteps. Then there was a faint flicker of light through the trees, as if someone was holding a flashlight. Aaron turned off his lantern and peeked through the window. The path leading to the road looked empty, but he could sense someone was there. He waited quietly for a few minutes until the sound faded away. Maybe it was just an animal, he told himself, or one of the guards doing another round. Still, a strange feeling lingered in his chest. He locked the door carefully before lying down on the small bed upstairs. The cabin creaked gently with the wind, and the lake shimmered softly under the stars. Arun closed his eyes and tried to rest. But the thought of those guards and the restricted zone kept circling in his mind. Something about this place did not add up, and he promised himself he would find out the truth in the morning. The next morning began quietly with sunlight falling across the lake and a layer of mist floating over the water. Birds chirped softly in the trees, and the sound of small waves touched the wooden dock near the cabin. Aaron woke up early and stepped outside to breathe in the cool morning air. The view was beautiful, but the memory of the previous night still stayed in his mind. He made a cup of tea on his portable stove and sat on the porch, thinking about the guards who had shown up without warning. Their words kept repeating in his head. They had said this was a restricted area under the Lakeside HOA. He had never heard of any such rule when he bought the cabin. He looked again at his folder of papers, flipping through every document one by one. Everything seemed legal and complete. The property deed had his name written clearly, the map showed the boundary, and the tax record from the previous owner was attached. Still, the thought of those guards made him uneasy. He decided to drive into the nearby town to see if someone could explain the situation. The nearest general store was about 15 minutes away by car, near the main road that connected Pine Hill Lake to the town of Riverton. As he drove, the forest slowly opened into a small cluster of houses and a few shops. There was a bakery, a hardware store, and a gas station. Arun parked near the hardware shop and walked in to buy some supplies for his renovation. Inside, an old man stood behind the counter wearing glasses and reading a newspaper. He looked up and smiled politely. "Morning, young man. What can I get you today?" the man asked. Aaron smiled back. "Morning. I bought a cabin near the lake a few days ago and I'm doing some repairs. Just need some nails, brushes, and paint for now." The old man handed him the items and said, "So you're the new owner of that old cabin? I thought nobody would ever move there again." Aaron raised an eyebrow. "Again? Why do you say that?" The man hesitated. "Well, it's just that the place has been empty for a long time. Most of the cabins around the lake belong to the Lakeside Homeowners Association, but that one, if I remember right, used to be outside their control until some dispute years ago. I don't know much, but people here don't like talking about it." Aaron became more curious. "Do you know what kind of dispute?" The old man shook his head. "Something about land rights and ownership records. The HOA tried to claim more land around the lake and some owners refused to join. I think your cabin was one of them. After that, no one lived there for years. Some say it was because of paperwork problems, others say it was just forgotten." Aaron thanked him and paid for the supplies. Before leaving, the man added, "If you really want to know the truth, you should talk to Mrs. Green. She lives near the southern side of the lake. She's been here the longest and knows every story this place has." That gave Aaron an idea. He drove back toward the lake and followed the road that curved along the southern shore. After a few minutes, he saw a small house with a garden full of flowers. An elderly woman was watering her plants. Aaron parked and greeted her politely. "Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Aaron. I just bought the old cabin near the north side of the lake. Someone told me you might know about the area." The woman smiled warmly and invited him to sit on a wooden bench near the porch. "Ah, yes, I know that cabin. My husband and I used to go fishing near there years ago. It's a quiet place, but I also know it has a complicated history. Aaron listened carefully as she continued. The land around Pine Hill Lake was owned by several families many years ago. When the Lakeside Homeowners Association was formed, most owners joined so the community could manage the area together. But one family, the original owners of your cabin, refused to sign the agreement. They wanted to stay independent and keep their land private. The HOA didn't like that because they wanted control over the entire lake region. There were meetings, letters, and even court cases, but nothing was ever fully settled. In the end, the cabin was left abandoned. Aaron asked, "So does that mean my purchase might not be valid?" Mrs. Green shook her head. "Not exactly. If your documents are real and properly registered with the county, then the property is yours. The problem is that the HOA still believes that area belongs to their community, even though it was never finalized. They sometimes act like guards of the lake, even beyond their actual boundary. It's been a small fight between them and the county office for years." Aaron thanked her for the information. The conversation made him realize that his situation was more complicated than he thought. He decided to visit the county office in Riverton the next day to double-check his ownership records. Before leaving, Mrs. Green gave him a friendly smile and said, "Don't let them scare you, young man. If you have the papers, you have the right to be there. Just stay calm and careful." When Aaron returned to the cabin that evening, the air was cooler, and the lake reflected the soft orange light of the sunset. He unpacked his new tools and decided to clean the storage room near the back of the cabin. The door was stuck at first, but with a little push it opened. Inside, there were old boxes covered with dust and spider webs. Most of them were empty, but one wooden box caught his attention. It had initials carved on the top that read HL. He opened the box and found a collection of old papers, letters, and photographs. Some of the letters were signed by someone named Harold Lewis. Aaron realized this must have been the same Mr. Lewis who sold him the cabin, or perhaps his father. Among the papers, one folded document looked different. It had a faded county stamp and a title that read, "Boundary Clarification Notice." Aaron unfolded it carefully. The document showed a map of Pine Hill Lake with lines marking the HOA property and private lands. His cabin was drawn right at the border but clearly marked as private property, not HOA land. The paper was old but official, dated almost 20 years ago. He felt both relief and curiosity. If this document was real, it proved that his cabin was indeed independent. But why did the HOA guards still claim it was restricted? Maybe they didn't know about this document, or maybe they wanted to keep something hidden. As he placed the paper in a plastic folder for safety, he heard a sound outside. It was faint but steady, like footsteps on gravel again. He turned off his lantern and looked through the window. The same white SUV was parked near the trees, its lights off this time. He could barely see the shape of one person standing near the fence facing the cabin. Aaron stood still, his heart beating faster, unsure what to do. After a few moments, the figure turned and walked back to the vehicle. The SUV drove away slowly, disappearing into the darkness. He locked the door and sat near the table holding the old document tightly. The lake shimmered outside under the pale moonlight, quiet and mysterious. He now knew that something deeper was going on at Pine Hill Lake, and the next step would be to uncover why the HOA was so interested in his cabin. The morning light came softly through the window as Arun prepared to leave for the county office. The night had been calm after the strange visit from the SUV, but the feeling of being watched still bothered him. The document he found in the wooden box now rested carefully in his folder. He hoped it would help him prove his ownership once and for all. After a quick breakfast, he locked the cabin and started his truck. The drive to the Riverton County office took almost 40 minutes, but the road was peaceful. Trees lined both sides of the narrow lane, and the early fog hung low above the ground. Aaron tried to calm his thoughts by focusing on the scenery. The smell of pine trees and the soft chirping of birds helped him relax a little. When he reached the small town center, he parked near the courthouse. The county land records office was a short walk away. The building was old but well-maintained, with a stone sign that read, "Riverton Property and Land Management." Inside, a woman at the front desk greeted him politely. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you today?" she asked with a friendly smile. Aaron introduced himself and explained the situation. "I recently bought a cabin near Pine Hill Lake. Some guards from the Lakeside HOA came and said I was trespassing. I just want to confirm that my property papers are correct." The woman nodded. "Of course. Please give me the address or parcel number." Aaron handed her the folder. She typed quickly on her computer, checking the county database. After a few moments, she said, "Yes, I see your property record here. It was registered under the name Arun Malik just last month. The transfer from the previous owner, Harold Lewis, was approved and filed properly." Aaron felt a wave of relief. "So the cabin is legally mine?" "Yes," she confirmed. "According to county records, it's private land and not under the Lakeside HOA jurisdiction. However," she added, looking a bit uncertain, "this plot is very close to the border where the HOA territory begins. There have been small issues before between the HOA management and individual owners. It's usually a misunderstanding that gets resolved through documentation." Aaron nodded and took a deep breath. "That's good to know. But the guards seemed serious, like they truly believed I didn't belong there." The woman hesitated before speaking again. "They tend to act on their own sometimes. Their job is mostly to protect HOA property, but they have been known to overstep the boundary. If they return, you can show them this official record. I'll print a certified copy for you." She handed him the printed page with the county seal stamped at the bottom. Arun thanked her sincerely and left the office feeling more confident. The sky outside had turned brighter, and he decided to have lunch at a small cafe nearby before heading back to the lake. While eating, he overheard two locals talking at the next table. Their conversation mentioned something about the new man at the old Lewis place. Aaron realized they were talking about him. One of them, a middle-aged man wearing a cap, said, "He bought that cabin? Brave man. People around here stay away from that property." The other replied, "It's not haunted or anything like that. It's just that the HOA doesn't like outsiders owning land near their area. They say the ground hides something important, but no one really knows what." Aaron kept quiet but listened carefully. The mention of something hidden under the ground made him curious. He wondered what they meant. When he returned to the cabin later that afternoon, the lake was calm again, and the sky had turned a pale shade of orange. He felt more confident now that he had the certified papers. As he parked the truck, he noticed a folded piece of paper tucked under the cabin door. It looked new and out of place. He unfolded it and read a short message written in neat handwriting. "Be careful who you trust. The HOA does not protect the lake. They protect what lies beneath it." There was no signature, no name, just that single sentence. Arun looked around but saw no one. The area was quiet, and only the soft sound of water touching the shore filled the air. He folded the note and kept it in his pocket. That evening, he tried to focus on painting the walls inside the cabin. The scent of fresh paint mixed with the cool lake breeze made the place feel more like home. But the note kept bothering him. What could be beneath the lake that the HOA wanted to protect? As night approached, he decided to organize the papers he found in the wooden box again. Along with the old map and letters, he noticed one envelope he had missed earlier. Inside was a faded photo showing 3 men standing near the lake with digging equipment. One of the men looked like Harold Lewis, the previous owner. Behind them, there was a large wooden sign that said Restricted Zone. Aaron turned the photo over and saw a date written on the back from 20 years ago. The photo was taken near the southern side of the lake, close to the area where Mrs. Green lived. It made him wonder if she knew more than she had told him. The next morning, he decided to visit her again. He walked along the lakeside path carrying the photo in his pocket. When he reached her house, Mrs. Green was sitting outside knitting a scarf. She smiled when she saw him. "Back so soon, young man? Did you find what you were looking for at the county office?" She asked kindly. "Yes, I did. The county confirmed that the cabin is legally mine," Aaron said. "But I found something else too." He showed her the photo. "Do you know anything about this?" Her smile faded slightly as she looked closely at the picture. "Oh dear, that brings back memories. That was taken during the old expansion project the HOA tried to start. They wanted to dig near the lake to build new facilities, but something happened. There were rumors that they found something underground, something unexpected. After that, the project stopped suddenly and the area was closed off. Only a few people knew the real reason, and most of them left soon after." Aaron listened carefully. "Do you know what they found?" Mrs. Green sighed. "No one told the full story, but some say they discovered old tunnels or an underground room near the lake. The HOA sealed the area and never mentioned it again. Since then, They've been very strict about who lives near the water. Maybe they think your cabin is too close to whatever they're hiding." Aaron thanked her again for her honesty. As he walked back, his mind filled with questions. What could be buried near the lake that was so important? Why did the HOA guard still watch his cabin at night? When he reached his cabin, the air felt colder than usual. The sun had already started to set, and the reflection on the lake shimmered in shades of pink and gold. He stood for a long moment thinking about the note, the map, and the photograph. Then he decided to walk around the edge of his property to see if there was anything unusual near the ground. Behind the cabin, near the old fence, he noticed a patch of soil that looked different from the rest. It was smoother and darker, as if it had been disturbed recently. He crouched down and touched it. The ground felt firm, but something under the surface made a dull sound when he tapped it with a stick. It was hollow. He decided not to dig right away. Instead, he marked the spot with a stone and planned to investigate in daylight. As the evening deepened, he went inside, closed the door, and sat by the window watching the quiet lake. The view was peaceful, but his thoughts were full of curiosity and unease. He now understood that his cabin was not just an old building on the shore. It was sitting on land that carried a secret the HOA wanted to keep hidden. The silence of the night settled again, and Aaron knew that whatever mystery lay under that soil would soon come to light. The next morning, sunlight came softly through the trees around the cabin. The air was fresh, and the lake reflected the golden light of dawn. Arun stood near the window holding a cup of tea, thinking about what he had discovered behind his cabin the day before. The sound of the hollow ground still echoed in his mind. Whatever was buried there had to be important, especially if the HOA was so protective of this place. After finishing his tea, he put on his work gloves and picked up a small shovel. He walked to the back of the cabin where he had placed a stone to mark the spot. The soil was still dark and slightly soft. He began to dig slowly, moving the dirt carefully. After only a few minutes, his shovel hit something hard. It made a metallic sound that was dull but clear. Aaron knelt down and brushed away the soil with his hands until a large metal surface appeared. It looked like an old hatch, about the size of a door but built flat into the ground. Rust covered most of it, but a small handle was still visible on one side. Aaron felt his heart race with curiosity. He tried pulling the handle, but it would not move. It was locked tightly and there was no visible keyhole. He sat back and studied it for a moment. The hatch was hidden perfectly beneath the soil, right behind the cabin where no one would think to look. It must have been built many years ago, perhaps during the time when the HOA tried to dig near the lake. Aaron decided not to force it open immediately. Instead, he went back inside to check the old papers again. Among the letters from Harold Lewis, he found one that mentioned maintenance work done near the lower storage. The letter said, "The hatch near the back fence must stay sealed until further notice." Aaron realized that Harold had known about this underground place and had kept it a secret. He felt both nervous and excited. There was no mention of danger in the letter, but it clearly meant the hatch led somewhere important. He spent the afternoon cleaning the area around it, removing weeds and fallen leaves. The more he uncovered, the more he noticed that the hatch was connected to a set of old metal pipes that disappeared into the ground. It looked like some kind of access to an underground room or tunnel system. Later that day, as he was examining the hatch, he heard a sound coming from the path leading to the cabin. A small truck was approaching slowly. It stopped near the gate and a man stepped out holding a folder. He looked around before calling out politely, "Hello there. Are you Mr. Aaron Malik?" "Yes, that's me," Arun replied, walking toward him. "I'm from the county survey department," the man said. "We received a notice from the HOA office about your property. They reported that you were making unauthorized changes near the restricted boundary. I just came to check if everything is fine." Aaron stayed calm. "I'm only doing regular repairs on the cabin. I haven't changed anything outside the legal boundary. You can check my papers." The man smiled faintly. "I believe you, sir. This is just routine. The HOA can be a bit too strict sometimes." He paused and looked around. "I should tell you something, though. The HOA files about this area are unusual. Some of the old maps show an underground maintenance structure here, but no one has officially documented it for over 20 years. If you find anything strange, it's best to inform the county office directly, not the HOA." Aaron nodded and thanked him for the advice. The surveyor looked at the lake one more time before leaving. His expression showed a mix of curiosity and caution. When the truck disappeared, Arun went back to the hatch with renewed determination. He wanted to know what was underneath. As evening approached, he fetched a wrench from his toolbox and tried to loosen the hinges. They were rusty but not impossible to move. After several attempts, he managed to lift the hatch halfway. A puff of cold air came out, carrying a faint smell of metal and dust. He held his flashlight and looked down. A narrow staircase led into the ground. The walls were made of concrete and cobwebs hung from the edges. It looked like no one had entered this place in decades. Arun hesitated for a moment but then decided to go down carefully. The staircase went about 15 steps deep and opened into a small underground room. It was dark, but the beam from his flashlight revealed old wooden shelves and several metal boxes. Some of the boxes had faded labels, while others were sealed with rusted locks. There was also a thick cable running along the wall, disappearing into another narrow tunnel on the left side. Aaron's heart beat faster as he explored the space. He brushed dust off one of the boxes and opened it. Inside were old folders filled with reports, maps, and photographs. Most of them had the HOA logo printed on the corner. One report caught his attention. It was titled Lakeside Geothermal Survey, 2003. The report mentioned that the HOA had conducted a geological study of the area but halted the project after finding unstable underground formations near the lake. As he flipped through the papers, another document slipped out. It was a letter written to someone named Director of Lakeside Operations. The letter said, "The discovery under the northern section must remain confidential. All entry points are to be sealed until further notice." Aaron felt a chill run through him. The northern section mentioned in the letter clearly referred to the area near his cabin. The HOA had sealed this underground structure and kept it a secret for years. He heard a faint sound behind him and quickly turned around. The wind from the open hatch above was making the metal creak softly. For a second, he thought someone might be outside, but everything remained still. He gathered a few of the papers and decided to take them upstairs for closer inspection. Before leaving, he looked once more into the tunnel that continued deeper underground. It was too dark to see the end, but a faint draft of air came from it, proving it was connected to another opening somewhere. He climbed back up and closed the hatch carefully, covering it again with leaves and soil. The sun had already set, and the sky turned a deep blue with streaks of orange near the horizon. The peaceful view of the lake felt different now that he knew there was something hidden below. Inside the cabin, he spread the documents across the table and read them slowly. The reports confirmed that the HOA had tried to use geothermal energy from the lake area, but stopped the project when they discovered unstable ground, or possibly something artificial underground. Whatever it was, the HOA did not want anyone to find out. As the night grew darker, Aaron organized the papers into a neat pile. Just as he was about to put them away, he noticed headlights moving outside. A vehicle stopped near the gate again. This time it was the same white SUV from before. Two figures stepped out and began walking toward the cabin. Aaron quickly turned off the lights inside and looked through the window. The guards stood near the porch, shining their flashlights around. One of them spoke in a low voice. "He's been digging again." "The report was right," the other replied. "We need to tell the office before he finds anything." The director said this property was not supposed to be sold. Aaron stayed completely still as they looked around. After a few minutes, the guards returned to the SUV and drove away. He waited until their lights vanished before sitting down slowly. The words he had just heard filled him with more questions. Why was the cabin sold to him if it was not supposed to be sold? What exactly was the HOA trying to protect under the lake? Aaron looked at the stack of documents and the photograph of the old excavation team. He now understood that his discovery had uncovered more than a simple land dispute. Something much deeper connected this cabin, the underground tunnel, and the strange actions of the HOA. That night, the cabin stood quietly beside the calm lake. But Aaron knew peace would not last long. The truth beneath Pine Hill Lake was beginning to rise to the surface, and he was right in the middle of it. The morning after the guard's visit, Aaron woke early. The sound of birds filled the air, but his mind was heavy with questions. He sat on the porch with a notebook, going over everything that had happened since he arrived at the cabin. The locked hatch, the secret tunnel, the reports from the HOA, and now the guards who said the cabin was not supposed to be sold. It all connected to something deeper under the lake. He decided he needed to speak with someone who might know the history of this place before the HOA took over. He drove to the nearby town and stopped at the local cafe where people often gathered for breakfast. Inside, he noticed an older man sitting near the window reading a newspaper. The owner of the cafe whispered that the man's name was Mr. Henry, one of the oldest residents of the Pine Hill area. Aaron approached him politely and introduced himself. Henry looked up with kind but cautious eyes. "You must be the man who bought the old Lewis cabin," Henry said. "I heard it was sold after being empty for a long time." "Yes," Aaron replied. "I've been trying to fix it, but strange things have been happening. Do you know anything about the land near the lake or the people who used to own it?" Henry folded his newspaper and leaned closer. "I know a bit. That land was part of a private research project many years ago before the HOA was formed. The project was stopped after something went wrong near the northern section of the lake. They said it was a geological issue, but most of us never believed that." Aaron listened carefully. "Do you remember who ran that project?" "Some company that worked with the local council," Henry said. "But after they left, the HOA took control of the land and sealed everything. They built fences and stopped people from going near that area. The funny part is, the old cabin you bought used to belong to the project manager himself. His name was Harold Lewis." Aaron's eyes widened. "Harold Lewis left letters inside the cabin. He mentioned something called a geothermal survey." Henry nodded slowly. "Yes, that was it. They were trying to build underground energy systems, but they found something that changed their plans. Harold disappeared soon after. Some say he moved away quietly. Others say he stayed hidden somewhere around the lake. Nobody really knows." After thanking Henry, Aaron drove back to the cabin with his thoughts racing. If Harold was the one who built the underground tunnel, then maybe he had left something behind that explained everything. The letter about sealing the hatch suddenly made more sense. When Aaron reached the cabin, he noticed the soil near the hatch had been disturbed. Someone had clearly been there while he was gone. His heartbeat quickened as he hurried to check. The hatch was closed, but the lock looked newer, as if replaced. He realized the guards must have come again during the morning. Determined not to be stopped, he walked around the cabin searching for another entry point to the tunnel. Remembering the reports he had read, he noticed one line in the map that showed a second hatch near the edge of the lake, hidden under a wooden platform. He went there with his flashlight and crowbar. The platform was partly covered by moss and leaves, but after removing a few boards, he found another small metal door beneath it. This one was easier to open. It creaked as he lifted it and revealed a narrow passage that connected to the same underground area he had explored earlier. Aaron climbed down carefully and followed the tunnel deeper than before. The air was cool and quiet except for the echo of his footsteps. After walking a few meters, he reached a small chamber filled with old machinery. Pipes ran through the walls, and gauges still hung from the control panels. On one of the dusty tables lay a folder marked Final Phase Report. Aaron opened it and began reading. The report said the underground system had not been for energy production alone. It had been built to monitor the natural movements of the lake's underground springs. During the final phase, the team discovered an artificial structure beneath the lake bed, made of stone and metal, unlike anything natural. The report said it emitted strong magnetic fields, which caused instability in the surrounding soil. The HOA had been formed shortly after to keep the area restricted while the site was buried and sealed. Aaron realized this was the real reason the HOA guards were so protective. They were not guarding the cabins. They were guarding what was under the lake. He took pictures of the report with his phone and turned to leave, but then he saw something strange in the corner of the room. A small glass case covered with dust contained a metal plaque. The writing on it said, "Project Lewis, authorized access only." Beneath the plaque was a small notebook. Aaron opened it carefully. It was Harold Lewis's personal journal. The first few pages described the construction of the tunnels and the excitement of the project. But the later pages told a different story. Harold wrote that he had discovered something under the lake that looked like an old vault made of unknown material. The vault emitted a low vibration that affected the water's temperature and caused minor earthquakes in the area. The government wanted it sealed, but the HOA was created to keep it hidden permanently. Aaron understood now. The HOA was not just a homeowners association. It was a front for an organization that managed a secret buried beneath the lake. Suddenly, he heard footsteps echoing through the tunnel. The sound was slow and heavy, He turned off his flashlight and stood still, holding his breath. Voices followed. "Check this section. He must have found another way in," said one of the guards. Aaron quietly moved to the far end of the chamber, where the tunnel split into two paths. He took the smaller one that sloped upward. It led to a narrow opening that connected back to the forest. He climbed out carefully and hid behind a large tree until the voices faded away. When he returned to the cabin, it was already late evening. The sun was setting over the lake, painting the water in shades of orange and pink. Arun sat on the porch, tired but filled with a sense of accomplishment. He had uncovered the truth that had been hidden for decades. He looked at the lake and thought of Harold Lewis. The man had tried to protect the truth by sealing the hatch and leaving clues in his letters. Now Arun carried that responsibility. He knew he could not keep this secret alone. He decided to send copies of the documents and photos to the county survey department. 2 days later, officials from the county arrived to inspect the site. The HOA tried to deny everything, but the reports in Harold's journal proved that they had been hiding important geological data and private experiments. The area was declared public property for research, and the HOA's control was suspended. Aaron finally had peace. He continued to renovate the cabin slowly, turning it into a small retreat where he could rest and enjoy the calm view of the lake. The hatch behind the cabin was sealed safely by the county, but this time it was no longer a secret. One evening, while watching the sunset, he found a small message carved on the wooden wall inside the cabin. It said, "Truth always finds a way." Aaron smiled. He knew Harold must have written it years ago. The cabin that once brought him confusion and fear had now given him a story that changed the entire town's history. Pine Hill Lake looked peaceful again, its secrets finally resting beneath calm water, no longer hidden but remembered.